You know who you are. You know who we are. You know where you are.
If you don't,
is
be a professional.
Daily Gain.
Daily.
Yes.
Daily Gains.
You're here to hear about Proverbs, and we're not even close to that book. I mean, we are as far as flipping through the Bible, but not as far as time, because there's a huge gap we don't even talk about. But we're in Matthew today.
How did we get to Matthew?
Exactly. Chapter 5, looking at the Sermon on the Mount. If you haven't listened to the last episode, please go back and listen to it and share it, because if not...
This is not going to make much sense. You really need to go back and listen to that one, because these two we intentionally put as a couplet to
Correct.
end the series on Proverbs. So in last week's, we talked about Jesus as the completion of God's wisdom. This week, we're
Correct.
looking at how Jesus, in fact, used wisdom. This is sort of the practical.
Yes.
Last week was theory. This is practicum.
Right,
So,
because Jesus
back and
came
listen to
to earth. It's like trying to explain love without explaining John 3:16. I can't do love fully unless I look at, like, whenever I talk to marriage people, single people, whatever, kids, and we start talking about love, and often it is defined by comfort,
Right.
selfishness, pride, hubris, a whole bunch of things. And I have to move away from that. I just go straight to John 3:16 and talk about God loving the world so much.
Yeah, and even there, you can't talk about John 3:16 unless you also talk about Calvary specifically.
But and exactly, it just kind of unfolds where
Unpacks
I have to look at
itself.
truth and love together, with an understanding that first you feel the love and then you understand the truth, because that truth is so uncomfortable, where I must reconcile that I am a horrible sinner, saved by grace. And now you're just talking about another big word that if I don't connect to the truth, I can't really understand love. So we're looking
With
at Matthew
that
chapter
all in
5.
mind, that's how we got here.
Starting off light, we're looking at the Beatitudes. Yes, that is part of the Sermon on the Mount. It is not all of it. Often people think it is, but I personally, I was telling you, Jer, I find every time that I come to this section of Scripture, it humbles me more and more and challenges me in a new way, which is just part of the dynamicness of the Word of God, because I know the Beatitudes, and yet the application part is always challenging. Okay. Matthew chapter 5. You ready, sir? No Pete and repeat. You ready? Okay.
Let's do it.
I'm going to read verse 1 and 2, not just because. Now, when Jesus saw the crowds, he went up on a mountainside and sat down. His disciples came to him, and he began to teach them. He said, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. Blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. Blessed are those who are persecuted because of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven." 11. Blessed are you when people insult you, persecute you, and falsely say all kinds of evil against you because of me. Rejoice and be glad, because great is your reward in heaven. For in the same way they persecuted the prophets who were before you. Okay, so my reason for thinking this connects to Proverbs, I mean, you kind of laid the groundwork and I followed up, but these are like Proverbs to me. And Jesus is saying them, he's making it clear that there's something here you need to pay attention to, just like with Proverbs, and apply it. So this is Christ saying it. And the simplicity of it, and yet the depth of it, when you talk about it from an application standpoint, to me is profound. And I love the rest of the Sermon on the Mount, where we look at salt and light, right, and how we talk about forgiveness and divorce and marriage and oaths and your word and loving your enemies. There's so much more. Giving to the needy, like, it's crazy. And I say crazy as far as slang, not lock Jesus up because he's mentally ill, but more it's I'm full now, and yet he still kept going.
Yes.
um,
Yeah.
and that's often how I feel with the Proverbs in general. I try and pick a couple out for the day to wrestle with and ask questions about and go before God in relationship, trying to understand, like, what do you want me to do with this today? And my hope is that those who are listening will do the same, that it won't be an academic thing, but it'll be a relationship thing. And so that's how this kicks off when I hear, blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Right? Like
Yeah.
that is about relationship. Just as blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. I'm mourning, someone's coming to comfort, there's relationship. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. Often we think about the inheritance as opposed to what we're being called to. And I think that's the challenge for me, not weakness, but meekness, not misunderstanding how that looks in today's culture, because I need a proper relationship with God to be able to engage in that with the future mindset of there's an inheritance attached to this. But that isn't something that should distract me today, so that I'm pushing meekness again in taking a worldly definition.
I have to disagree with you there, because I
Go for
did
it.
graduate from Trump U, so I know that meekness is
Oh.
contrary to, so let's talk about distractions.
Thank you for
that
being
was
one.
A swipe right there.
Thank you for being a distraction.
So here, I told you this. I told you I would just be vulnerable here.
Yeah, go for it.
We were actually recording. The Beatitudes in particular have always been a struggle for me for two reasons. One, like I said before we started, they just feel open-ended to me. And two, I don't want to use too strong language here, but the fact that we use the word blessed, we read it that way, blessed is, as opposed to reading it the way that we would read this word if we saw it anywhere else, which is blessed, always trips me up, because it makes me say, what does it mean that this person is blessed? So I've studied my undergrads in Bible, my grad degree. I took multiple courses, including several courses in Greek for my grad degree. I understand what blessing and cursing is. Mm-hmm. But when I read this is more precious moments. This is the problem for me. It's reached this level for me of being more precious moments than scripture.
Gotcha.
And so because I trip over it, and
so why don't you look at a different version?
Well, it's not that. It's that I have to actually sit with this. I've got to sit with this and unpack and say, wait a second, this is not, this is not sweet Jesus, meek and mild. This is Jesus himself saying the person who does this has the blessing of God residing on them.
This is a distinct recognition that not only can you serve me, but I am giving you the guidance on how to do it. So often people want to understand their purpose, and out of that, or I don't even want to say out of that, the central reason is because of a lack of identity, community, and a sense of, purpose. And yet Jesus is making it clear, if you love me, you'll obey me. I'm telling you here what it means to be family. Mm-hmm. And it looks very different than what the world does. Mm-hmm. Why? Because I am distinct and know that this is how my distinction flows out in engaging with others. I'm giving you the recipe. And that's hard when we look at him healing and engaging and dying on the cross and not really giving a lecture on all that he's doing, right here for me is where it's like, yeah, I did, right? Um, I'm pure in heart. I'm merciful.
That's it exactly.
I'm
He's
meek.
describing himself.
Exactly. Like
That's what he's doing. He's not saying, hey, if you can do this, you're going to be blessed. He's saying, this is what it looks like to be the man of God. And all of these things that he describes, he is the embodiment, the perfection, the fulfillment of. Now, where my mind goes with this is that blessing, what's the right way to say this? So if I ask you, Dave, how you doing, and you're having a bad day,
I'm blessed. No, I'm just joking.
You might, well, that's it, right? You might throw out the too blessed to be stressed, right? Too blessed to be stressed. We don't say too blessed to be stressed, which would be funny. I mean, I'm good with that. If we want to start doing that, I'm too blessed to be stressed. Yes, but here's the thing: we say that because, again, in our parlance, we've separated this word blessed from cursed.
Mm-hmm.
Now we have the word accursed or accursed, but we separate out blessing from cursing when we come to, at least in my mind, when we come to the Beatitudes, we don't think about the other side of this, the other side of the coin, which is the person who is not this, or the person who is the opposite of this. This person has the curse of God residing on them. But this is where it really punches me in the gut. Christ, who embodied all of this, who was the blessed of God, also became the curse.
Well, that's
us.
And that's why I like the end. That's why I didn't stop solely with just the blessed ones. But
pull that, man. Pull that. Yeah, pull that.
Verse 12, rejoice and be glad because great is your reward in heaven, for the same way they persecuted the prophets who were before you. Well, you go, what? Well, 11 says, blessed are you when people insult you.
Yes.
Persecute you and falsely say all kinds of evil against you because of me. Who's the me? Christ. He's saying this blessing that you think you want, and he's challenged the disciples with this and will challenge them later. You ask to sit on my left and right side? You ask, like, you have your own definition of a blessed life. Mm-hmm. I need you to carry your cross. I need you to be so distinct and different that people hate you because they hated me.
You don't get the gain except through the pain.
This is real. This is again where the rubber meets the road. It's so uncomfortable when I know that this life is not a life of ease. This is not a life of comfort. And often it's presented in that way. It's easy to get into relationship with Christ. It's easy to get into heaven. And I go, no. It's easy to receive the gift that he has given, but understand the cost was not easy. The cost was great. You just don't have to bear. But the cost that you do have to bear in being in his family, a life of yielding and surrender and having an actual Lord, is quite hard if you are determined to do it unto self. It's impossible. And yet a life of surrender, when I understand who I am in relation to the Creator, Christ, when I understand who I am and that I am loved, that he is good, and I know who he is, that he is just and merciful, then it makes it easy to follow with a life that is completely yielded to him. Mm-hmm. Being yielded means I have no clue what this day holds, but yet I'm giving him this day. I'm praying through the things that I have, that I think I should be doing, with the understanding his ways are higher than mine, and that has my desire has nothing to do with what actually is going to happen. Nothing. Whether an earthquake occurs, or I get stuck in an airport, or I get a flat tire, I need to understand God is doing something and be aware of the situation, have presence to be with him so that I can be present with the people around me with an understanding that my job is to glorify him
Yep.
throughout it all. Just as you sit in a treatment center, you're there to glorify God just as you are in the soup kitchen. It,
Right.
it doesn't change. And so often we put on a different face for where we are. We put on a face for church, we put on a different face for work, and we put on a different face for home. And the people at home know us best and realize, you know what? I don't think the church one or the work one's the real you. I think this is, and the issue there is Christ should be there too. Turn off the TV, get on your knees. It's not a living room, it's a TV room. Change it back into an actual living room where you relate to God and engage with Him. Like that's how it should work. It's not meant to be a sitting room. Make it a space. If you need a prayer closet, whatever it is, have that time with Him so that you can actually live. And that's what the Beatitudes is to me about. It's how do you live? Do you live a holy life? And it doesn't, I love what you said, how it seems like it doesn't end. That's one of the things I like about it. And the reason why I like it is because it's a relationship, right? When we started hanging out, I had no clue years later we'd still be hanging out. If someone had told me, I never would have believed them. It's just one of those things that just kind of keeps going and going. And you're like, okay, this is pretty cool. The same thing should be true when it comes to our relationship with God. It should just be one of those things where you're going, okay, you know what bothers you, God, today?
Mm-hmm.
Heathens? Oh, got it. They bother you every day. Is there anything new about today? Oh, these heathens are, doing XYZ in your name. Huh? How did that come about? I was praying, I watched the news, and it's like, you know what? They're professing Christ, and yet they are not showing grace, love, or anything that resembles Him, and yet they are happy to put a cross before before the community. How do you want me to engage with that? Like real relationship. And as I engage with the Beatitudes, I see you find them valuable. So it's not just the other people, but even these other individuals who are not putting forward your name in a way that is clear or true. You love them too. You're showing them grace because you could easily swallow them up. You could easily take care of this yourself. So how do you want me to respond? I'm your servant. You are my Lord.
That's why we got here to Matthew from Proverbs. That's how we did this. Because as we went through the last 2 seasons, looking at the Proverbs, unpacking how does this show us how we are to be living, we couldn't leave that without getting here and saying this was all pointing not just to Christ, but Christ Himself did this. This is one of when before we started recording, I told you I was feeling kind of two minds, because on the one hand, it would be easier for me to tie Jesus to the Proverbs by looking at the parables that Jesus told, because Proverbs use parallel structure and parables are throwing two things down side by side and looking at them side by side.
Yeah.
And in that sense, there's more, it's easier to talk about parallel structure and maxims and looking at Jesus's parables, but it really is Jesus's teaching here that ties us into the wisdom of God. But as you're saying, I can't simply take the book of Proverbs and start living out of those maxims. I can't simply take the Beatitudes and start living out of the Beatitudes and say, okay, well, I've done it. I've reached it. It's more than that.
Yes,
it is that Jesus laid Himself down, came back. He became the curse for us. He received the curse in His flesh. He canceled the certificate of our sin so that we could be blessed, so that we can now live in the pattern that He described, so that He receives glory. Not because He's laid it all out there. And this is the trap I really want us to avoid. I want us to avoid the trap of mature snobbery.
You mean of Pharisaical?
We say, because I've learned these things, because I know these things, I understand how God wants me to be. The fact is, it doesn't matter if you're 110 years old and you've been walking with God every day of your life. You don't.
And so I fully agree with that, but I also want to support it by stating, don't stay a spiritual baby. and consider that okay either. Like there are marks of maturity when it comes to
Very definitely.
a
No, I'm
child of
saying the
God.
same thing.
And so,
That's what this is. This isn't about take the textbook and figure and memorize it. This is
correct,
the textbook was written by the author. Yeah, okay, memorize a textbook. Now go walk with the author. Move into his house. Live with
correct.
him. Shadow him. Because that's what he's pulling us to. That's why
Yep,
he gave
commune
us
with him.
this.
Yep, commune with him. Yeah, that I mean that is my big hope out of
Yeah,
what
the
we're
both
doing
work
is
stuff.
that
Yep.
as we engage, even as people listen to it over and over again, is that first, go to the word, um, understand that this is a God thing, and second, go to him and ask for him to speak to you. Then third, go back.
Mm-hmm.
So because now he's actually opened your eyes and ears to hear. And then fourth, apply. And this isn't doing it unto self. This is a daily thing. And
That's
as
right.
your ears become better at listening, as your heart becomes softer, as your hands get used to doing the work that God has called you to, you'll be surprised um, how much He does in the little and big things because you're willing to keep Him as Lord. Things that you don't even think are important, because you have yielded your heart, He is working through. Little things, big things, from a song to a celebration to supporting a neighbor, loving someone who is hurt, like just the simple things. And then you realize 2 or 3 years later, oh, that bore fruit. I didn't even realize I was sowing a seed there. Clearly, that was a God thing, right?
He's the one doing it.
This is all for his glory and all his work. So why should I take pride in that when it really is I have to take pride in him?
Yep.
And so my
Yep.
hope is that we will do just that in our days to come, that we will sing and glorify that as we look at Psalms 119 and wrestle with, the word itself and its role in our life, who we are in relationship with God, because we definitely see David really wrestling with that. And then also understand there's wisdom there because truth resides with God. We have to go to him. We have to stay close, stay as the child, continually hold his hand, continually ask questions. It's okay, but no, play with him as well. Engage, laugh, relax, be,
Enjoy.
commune.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
And so that's for me. When I look at the Beatitudes and I see the comforting and all this other stuff, I say, okay, this is a full relationship. This is not simply an academic one. This is not only a social one. This is a full relationship where he's invited into every part of the house, where I am known and he is known. And yes, we are going to continue to grow together. Um, it's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful opportunity. And yes, it is very messy and requires us, because he is God, to be needy, to be real, and to recognize that our righteousness lies in him and not in what we do.
And that's where the plane lands.
Yep.
We've done 2 seasons here, worked through the Proverbs, and that's why we've done this. I have no idea what we're going to do in the next season of Daily
I don't
Games.
either.
And
But
it's
we look
okay.
forward to we look forward to it. It'll be in the
Yeah.
Bible. We know that much.
I, personally, for Dave as well, I hope that you have been strengthened and I hope that you continue to be
Yep.
as you reflect on these. Go back and listen to these again. It's not going to hurt our feelings if you don't. It's not going to make us feel any special if you do. But these are
Correct.
there. We did this to be a help and a benefit to each other. And so, if you have any comments, feedback, thoughts, you can reach us at Daily Gains 2.
That's right.
have a chance to interact with you there. So look us up if you want to. Otherwise,
Lord willing, we'll see you.
it's been a real joy.
Yeah, Lord willing, we'll
these
see you
past
next
two
season.
seasons in Proverbs. Yeah.
It's been good for me. It's been really encouraging. So thank you all for the opportunity to be in your ear. Yeah, looking forward to more. Okay. God bless. Have a great rest of the year.
See you.